started to understand that, like, the being on the set with her was, the idea was it should.
For years, Meg Ryan was celebrated as America's sweetheart, the bright-eyed romantic lead whose effortless charm defined an entire era of Hollywood. Audiences adored her for her authenticity, her warmth, and her natural beauty. But recently, fans around the world were left stunned when new photos of Meg surfaced. And suddenly, everyone was asking the same question: what happened? Her latest appearance sparked waves of curiosity, confusion, and endless online chatter. Some fans claimed she looked different, others insisted she looked incredible, and many simply couldn't stop staring, trying to understand what had changed. But behind all the speculation lies a deeper truth: Meg Ryan's transformation is more than skin deep. What people often forget is that Meg has lived her life under the unforgiving glare of Hollywood's spotlight, a place where every wrinkle, every smile line, and every moment of aging becomes a headline. For decades, she faced intense pressure to look perfect, stay youthful, and maintain the image the world projected onto her. Now, as she steps back into public view, her face tells a story that goes far beyond rumors and assumptions. Her transformation reflects years of emotional growth, career shifts, personal challenges, and the simple, honest reality of being human in an industry that rarely allows women to age without scrutiny. The change everyone is talking about isn't just about appearance, it's about resilience, reinvention, and a bold refusal to blend into Hollywood expectations. What Meg Ryan is revealing now is surprising, empowering, and far more meaningful than anyone expected. And once you hear the full story behind her transformation, you may never look at those photos the same way again. When Meg Ryan stepped onto the red carpet for the first time in years, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Photographers who had been casually snapping away suddenly froze, lenses lifting sharply as if they were witnessing something completely unexpected. The woman who had once defined the warm, effortless glow of 90s Hollywood looked noticeably different, still elegant, still composed, but changed in a way that left everyone scrambling for explanations. Some fans were stunned, others were simply confused. Whispers rippled through the crowd as camera flashes burst like fireworks. Is that really Meg? What happened? She looked so different. But behind the shock was something deeper, an uncomfortable truth that Hollywood rarely talks about. For decades, Meg had carried the impossible weight of being America's sweetheart. She had built a career on a face that millions adored, a charm that studios depended on, and a softness that fans never wanted to see altered. Yet life, pressure, expectations, and time move on even for icons. Sources close to her reveal that Meg has grown tired of being treated like a museum piece, expected to remain frozen in the image the public created for her. She has battled the relentless scrutiny, the unfair criticism, and the emotional strain of living under a microscope where every wrinkle, every smile line, every change becomes a headline. As she took her place in front of the step and repeat backdrop that night, Meg seemed strangely calm, as if she already knew the world would react, judge, whisper, and dissect her face frame by frame. But she also seemed ready to challenge the narrative, ready to embrace change, ready to remind everyone that she is far more than the roles she once played. And this was only the beginning. Long before the red carpet moment that shocked fans across the world, Meg Ryan had been quietly fighting a battle that almost no one knew about. It wasn't a battle with another actor, a studio, or a failed project. It was a battle against the very machine that had once made her a superstar. Hollywood had built her up, wrapped her in a golden glow, and presented her as America's sweetheart, the face of romance, innocence, and effortless charm. But behind that glowing persona was a woman carrying expectations no human being could reasonably survive. Meg's rise to fame in the late 80s and early 90s was meteoric. When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, these weren't just popular films. They were cultural landmarks, shaping an entire generation's idea of love. Her smile was iconic, her timing flawless, her presence warm and unforgettable. But the success came with a price. Hollywood wanted Meg Ryan frozen in time, forever young, forever perfect, forever untouched. The industry didn't just admire her, they depended on her. Executives saw her as a guaranteed box office hit, Magazines used her face to sell millions of covers. Fashion brands wanted her image. Her appearance wasn't just hers anymore. It was valuable property that people were determined to protect, manipulate, and control. And that's where the pressure began. Whenever she tried to break out of the rom-com box, critics didn't just critique her performances, they attacked her personally. If she took on a dramatic role, they called it a mistake. If she stepped out looking tired or stressed, tabloids turned it into a scandal. If she chose to step away from the spotlight, they claimed her career was over. Meg wasn't allowed to age naturally. She wasn't allowed to change her style. She wasn't allowed to be human. One producer who worked with her in the early 2000s once admitted privately that Meg had to deal with more image-related pressure than nearly any other actress of her era. She was repeatedly told what angles looked best, which hairstyles were on brand, which outfits made her look younger, and even which expressions could be used in posters. Every detail was controlled, every decision scrutinized, every appearance judged. Friends later revealed that Meg tried to brush off most of it. She laughed during photo shoots, cracked jokes on set, and pretended not to care about the harsh comments swirling around her. But even the strongest spirits crack under unrelenting scrutiny. Over time, she became more private, less trusting, and increasingly selective about who she allowed into her circle. Meanwhile, the internet age only made things worse. With social media came a new wave of criticism, faster, harsher, and impossible to escape. Every red carpet photo was instantly dissected. Every candid image became the subject of speculation. People hid behind screens, making cruel comments they would never dare say in person. And whenever Meg disappeared from the spotlight, even for perfectly normal reasons, the gossip machine roared back to life with rumors, theories, and fabricated stories. So, when Meg eventually returned for a major appearance, people weren't just reacting to her face, they were reacting to years of silence, curiosity, and built-up expectations. Her transformation, whether real or exaggerated by cameras and lighting, instantly became the internet's favorite talking point. Some fans were shocked, others were defensive, but almost no one stopped to consider the truth. Meg Ryan had been living under a level of pressure that would break almost anyone. She was a woman who wanted privacy, peace, and the freedom to live without cameras tracking her every wrinkle, line, or expression. But Hollywood doesn't let go easily. Once you become its ideal, it fights relentlessly to keep you locked in that image. And Meg was tired of fighting. Her retreat from the spotlight wasn't a disappearance, it was a form of survival. She stepped back not because she was fading, but because she finally chose herself over an industry that demanded too much. But the story doesn't end here, because behind her decision to return, to show her face to the world again, was something deeper, something no one expected. By the time Meg Ryan stepped onto that red carpet, the one moment that sent shockwaves across social media, she had already made peace with something Hollywood never wanted her to accept. She didn't owe her image to anyone anymore. But the world wasn't prepared to let go of the Meg they remembered. That night became a collision between the past and the present, between nostalgia and reality, between a woman reclaiming her identity and an audience still clinging to the illusion they had built around her. The event was supposed to be simple, a charity gala, a celebration of the arts, a reunion of faces from an era when movies defined culture, not algorithms. Meg didn't plan for it to become a headline. She didn't think her walk across the carpet would spark worldwide discussion. She certainly didn't expect cameras to capture her with the kind of intensity usually reserved for scandals or royal weddings. She was just there to support a cause she believed in. But the moment she stepped out of the black SUV, the flashbulbs erupted like lightning. At first, reporters were stunned into silence. It wasn't because Meg looked shocking or unrecognizable, as tabloids later exaggerated. It was because she looked different from the mental image people had been holding onto for decades. The actress they remembered was forever frozen in the "You've Got Mail" era, smiling on a bookstore sidewalk in a wool coat, her short blonde hair bouncing as she laughed. People didn't realize that they weren't reacting to Meg's face, they were reacting to time itself. Within minutes, social media was ablaze. Comments poured in from every direction. Some were supportive, praising her elegance and confidence. Others were cruel, dissecting her features like she was an object and not a human being. The harshest critics hid behind anonymous usernames, comfortable in their digital distance, yet relentless in their judgments. But what people didn't know was that Meg had almost skipped the event entirely. Earlier that afternoon, she stood in front of her mirror feeling a familiar knot tightening her stomach. It wasn't vanity, it was dread. Walking back into the public meant opening the door to the same pressure she had spent years escaping. But something inside her shifted when she remembered why she was attending the gala. For a cause she cared about deeply. For her friends, her loved ones, her own sense of purpose. That was stronger than fear. So she took a deep breath, slipped into her elegant gown, and stepped into the world that had both celebrated and haunted her. As the photos went viral, the commentary grew louder. Articles popped up analyzing her appearance, comparing old photos to new ones, speculating about cosmetic procedures, age, lighting, makeup, anything the internet could grasp. But what most people missed, what cameras could never capture, was how Meg carried herself that evening. She was calm, present, authentic. She didn't hide from the cameras, nor did she pose for them with the rehearsed charm of her rom-com days. She simply existed, gracefully, confidently, like a woman finally comfortable in her own evolution. Later that night, when she returned home, she sat quietly on her couch, scrolling through the reactions she knew would come. Some comments hurt, some lifted her, some she ignored altogether. But the moment that truly mattered wasn't the world's reaction, it was her own. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to defend herself. She didn't explain. She didn't justify. She didn't respond. Because Meg Ryan had changed, and not just in appearance. She had grown into someone who no longer allowed Hollywood or the internet to dictate her worth. That night, the world saw transformation, but Meg saw liberation. And what came next would reveal the full truth behind her journey, one that fans had never heard before. While the internet argued, speculated, and overanalyzed Meg Ryan's appearance, she was quietly living a truth far more meaningful than anything trending online. The world saw a transformation, but behind that transformation was a story of reinvention, healing, and a woman reclaiming the parts of herself she had lost to decades of fame. What came next finally revealed why Meg had stepped back, why she returned, and what her appearance truly meant, not to the public, but to her. To understand Meg's transformation, one must first understand what she walked away from. Hollywood had always demanded perfection, but for Meg, the expectations were even more suffocating. She wasn't just famous, she represented a fantasy. The charming bookstore owner, the witty journalist, the romantic lead with the bright smile that promised hope, innocence, and warmth. Her face wasn't simply her identity. It was a symbol, but symbols aren't allowed to change, and when they do, people react. So Meg did the unthinkable in an industry built on constant visibility. She disappeared, not because she couldn't get roles, not because she was fading, but because she finally realized the cost of staying visible was higher than the cost of stepping away. Friends say she began focusing on her well-being mentally, spiritually, creatively. She spent time traveling, reading, hiking, and rediscovering the quiet she had once been forced to abandon. She revisited old journals, old scripts, old photographs, not with regret, but with gratitude. She raised her family away from cameras, valuing moments that weren't staged or approved by public relations teams. Most importantly, she began shedding the layers that Hollywood had wrapped around her: the pressure, the manufactured image, the fear of aging, the expectation to please. In that solitude, Meg reconnected with something essential: herself. So when she finally returned to public life years older, wiser, and visibly different, she wasn't trying to shock the world. She wasn't trying to look younger. She wasn't trying to fit back into the mold she broke free from. She was simply choosing to exist on her own terms. Her transformation wasn't a mistake, as some tabloids claimed. It wasn't a crisis. It wasn't a desperate attempt to stay relevant. It was the result of choosing self-ownership over public approval. But the real truth behind her appearance goes deeper still. For years, Meg had quietly supported several close friends and family members through serious health battles and personal losses, duties that aged her emotionally more than physically. These experiences taught her what truly matters: compassion, presence, and authenticity. She once confided to a friend that Hollywood's obsession with age felt absurd compared to the real challenges people face every day. That she stopped caring about being photographed at bad angles. She stopped chasing the impossible standard of eternal youth. She stopped apologizing for changing. Aging, to her, was not a tragedy, it was a privilege. And the world would soon learn that part of her transformation came from embracing a new creative direction. Meg had been quietly writing, producing, and exploring behind-the-scenes work. Her artistic passions had evolved. She wasn't trying to reclaim her old career. She was building a new one. She even joked once, "If people think my face changed, wait until they see how much my life has changed." But there was one moment, a private conversation with her son, that ultimately defined everything. According to a family friend, Meg had asked him whether he worried about her public image as she re-entered the spotlight. His answer was simple: "Mom, people who love you won't care what you look like, and the ones who do care don't love you." Those words freed her more than anything else. They reminded her that beauty isn't measured in flawless skin or preserved youth, it's measured in courage, authenticity, and the ability to evolve. When Meg stepped onto that red carpet, she wasn't trying to impress the world. She was proving something to herself, that she could return without hiding, that she could face judgment without fear, that she could be Meg Ryan, not the icon, not the fantasy, but the real woman without apologizing. Her transformation wasn't merely physical. It was emotional, spiritual, liberating. The world may have done a double take, but Meg Ryan, she finally looked in the mirror and saw someone she recognized.